Hello and welcome to One Page Fools, the podcast dedicated to all things One Page Rules, the free wargame system that's big on fun and low on fuss. I'm your host, Jimbo. No co-host this episode, I'm afraid, guys. Due to technical issues and a bunch of other stuff out of my hands, you've just got me. But we'll see what happens for the future. So how are you all doing, my fellow fools? Hopefully well in this tumultuous time we're in. Here in the One Page Fools household, things are pottering along as well as can be considered. The sudden release of the COVID-19 restrictions in the UK is looking pretty good. And especially for my friendly local game shop, which is managing to certainly utilise the ability to get more people in to its benefit. I'm debating between going for a few games myself, having already caught the virus. There's supposedly some degree of immunity for an extended period of time thereafter, but since I'm unvaccinated at the moment, and not quite in that bracket yet, I need to do some medical research before taking any action, and by that I mean consulting doctors, not some dude on Facebook. Oh, in some good cross-promotional news, I finally finished my Grimdark Future Starter Set supplement, Battle for Heinlein 4. Completely unofficial, of course, it utilises 2 boxes from Wargames Atlantic for a free mission campaign with unique scenarios and a wholly original narrative. I'm quite happy with it, and if you're interested in it all, there's a link to it on the One Page Fools Facebook page. Finally, speaking of the Facebook page, I'm super psyched to have reached my first landmark, over 100 likes and followers. I'm super thankful for everyone caring enough to consider my ramblings worth their time. I know it's been a bit of a wait since the last episode, I am afraid. As I mentioned in the post, I've had some issues in my life which I've been trying to deal with, but now I'm feeling better enough that I think I can continue with this latest episode. Now, enough about me, on to the news. So, you're a Joe Schmo like me with not enough money or room for a 3D printer, but you really want those awesome looking one-page rules miniature sculpts. What are you going to do? Beg your nearest friend for a printer? Try and finagle something with a local print-on-demand service, only to have the old need a million before it gets reasonably cheap issue? Well, have I got good news for you? One Page Rules have teamed up with Shop 3D to sell you their miniatures through Etsy. So, on the Etsy store, people that don't have a 3D printer can buy physical models directly from One Page Rules. The models come pre-assembled so that no glue is required. They don't provide bases, but let's be honest, it's not exactly hard to get bases. Shipping is from the UK and the US with a fixed price per order, so the more you order, the better it is in terms of shipping. This is a kind of a collaboration with the previously mentioned print-on-demand service Shop 3D, so One Page Rules are not actually printing them in-house, but it's thanks to this that they can keep the prices as low as something like $3 a mini. The miniatures are made from grey resin. They're quite sturdy, from my experience at least, from the ones I've ordered. They had very little clean-up. I managed to get an early order in for some Assault Grunts, the Alien Hive miniatures, just when it was initially starting to see as like a tester. I was really happy with them. I took some scale pictures, which are also up on the One Page Fools Facebook page, for those who are interested in like scaling, size, just see how it all came out. Currently, they're selling every miniature that they've currently made, with more on the way, including stuff that has miniatures out, but no rules as of yet, because they're still working on it for the Patreon, such as the Duccis of Vinci, which are kind of like a new human faction they're working on. It's just kind of more leaning on the steampunk, Italian Renaissance, Assassin's Creed kind of vibe. It's looking pretty good though, I'm going to be honest. I'm really hyped for them. I think the Etsy store though is going to be a really big deal for those quite interested in getting into the game, with like more canon ideals of what this universe is. I mean, I know obviously canonicity is kind of flexible, but it's all about, wanting to put money directly into One Page Anon's pocket, I suppose. But it's also good for anyone that wants an alternative to the pre-existing miniatures out there. I think it'll really take off though when it comes to the unique factions, such as the Duccis of Vinci, and some other spicy stuff coming up from One Page Anon. I know I'll be personally ordering some more stuff from there. I lack the technical gumph and spare cash to muck around for 3D printers, so the option is just to throw money at somebody, wait a bit, and then have pre-assembled high-quality minis turn up. So, that's pretty damn good in my opinion. Next up, news-wise, there's been a huge update amongst the game rules in an effort to balance out what some would consider the weaker factions, as well as just tidy up bits here and there. This includes brand new units and heroes such as Plague Runners and the Beastman Huntsmaster. It's also about adding options. The Rebel Guerrillas, for example, have gained tons of new weapons and ability choices, allowing them more diversity in combat and tactics. One of the more fascinating choices has been giving the entire Plague faction the Undead rule. This massively changes the way you play. You're suddenly ignoring morale, but possibly taking wounds in return, thus incentivizing you to hoard up, really giving that plague/zombie mob kind of feel. Ultra thematic, yet very simple. Also in the news, we've been celebrating the One Page Rules 7-year anniversary. Yes, it has in fact been 7 years since One Page Rules was first created in its original incarnations back in the mists of time. If you check on the One Page Rules website, One Page Anon gives a surprisingly detailed account of his trials and tribulations from starting the project just as a simple piece of fun to it spiralling all the way into this, one of the best free wargames rule sets out there, quite frankly. I'm hoping with these updates, though, to the mainline rules, that we can see some really new and interesting army designs out there, with people suddenly focusing away from their pre-original ideas working on something brand new. I'm a big fan of the idea of the rebel guerrillas. It's kind of an idea that you don't really see bandied about a lot, and it's gonna be neat to see kind of forces that were previously seen as the bottom tier, so to speak, rising up. Whilst obviously, we're not a very competitive bunch, I'd like to think, there is still, the aspect of this being a game, so people want to win. So congratulations, One Page Anon, for 7 years of damn good work. Short and sweet, but that's the end of the news. Now let's get to our main topic. And our main topic for today is the top 3 historical miniatures for an Age of Fantasy human army. Every fantasy game out there has a generic human faction, whether they be Gondor, Signar, 100 Kingdoms, or Prefecture of Ryu. It's your average man or woman in mediocre armour with a stick, generally relying on numbers, morale, and the occasional wonder weapon to give them the win. With one-page rules model agnosticism and the human army list's open nature, it can lead to some difficulty in choosing a model range. After all, you want the most options when constructing an army, right? Well, luckily, 90% of generic human armies are merely historicals with the serial numbers cut off. Unluckily, that gives you over 5,000 years of history to choose from. But that's why I'm here. So, for the purposes of this topic, the best will consist of 1. The ability to cover as much of the range as possible. 2. Price. 3. Is it in plastic, which, like it or not, tends to be the cheapest, most easily modelled and easily transported material out there. So, before anything else, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the black powder and fantasy divide. Firearms were created roughly in the 9th century within China, and by 1460 they'd spread to the Middle East, Europe, and Southeast Asia. This gives us significant periods of time in several cultures where handguns, cannons, and such alike simply didn't exist. So to stick thematically to your period may unintentionally handicap you. Of course, this leads into my next point: history is history and fantasy is fantasy. Ancient tanks and laser chariots just did not exist, so proxying or conversions may be necessary if you want to utilise as much as possible, while staying in theme. Nonetheless, the focus is how to get as much as you can without having to convert or proxy. Sure, you can always give your Vikings flintlocks, but that takes time and effort, so why not buy some conquistadors instead? I tried to take this into account since some ideas come more naturally than others, i.e. Chinese food dogs are more understandable as Griff Rider proxies than trying to finagle why your Macedonian elephant counts as a laser chariot, though I will admit Laser Nelly does have some interesting ideas around it. Saying all this, of course, this is merely my opinion. What you consider the best is down to you. So, in number 3. Ancients in Wargaming roughly covers 3000 BC to 5000 AD. A huge amount of time, and with innumerable cultures to choose from, it's difficult to pick, to say the least. Anyway, the ancient period is a perennial favourite of gamers and probably ranks 3rd on historicals outside of World War II and Napoleonics. For my mind though, there's one standout in this period that's perfect for fantasy gaming. Rome. The original superpower, covering 5 million square kilometres at its peak. Cruel, impervious, wise, faltering. All these and more encapsulate Rome. With such a wide amount of territory, they have a huge choice of subjects to employ, which gives the gamer a large choice of miniatures great for this list. The Imperial era, Lorica, Segmentum, and Headcrests, not chainmail and plumes, feature troops with hand weapons, spears, bows and throwing spears, which are, a good proxy in case you don't have enough bows at the time. Elite troops, not necessarily with great weapons, but they still, in my opinion, count as elite troops. Furious mob, light cavalry, and war chariots, all in plastic through the usage of Rome and their Gaelic British allies. Heroes are readily available, and we even have a cannon standing with the Roman Scorpion. Ave Roma, my friends. In number 2, Feudal Japan. Call me a weeb if you will, but there's something striking about samurai. The lacquered armour, the overly ornate helms, the pop culture obsession with the katana. Really stirring stuff. The Warring States era of Japan gives you a rich tapestry of ideas to utilise, as well as a rich mythology to work with for your fantasy units. Admittedly, your plastics are somewhat limited purely to Warlord games, but with a single purchase you can get a sizable army featuring archers, handgunners, greatswords, spearmen, light cavalry, and heavy cavalry. With quite a lot of medals out there to supplement this, you can easily get a great looking force quickly. For fantasy units, you've got these staples such as the Asian dragons, the pre-existing Oni, Kappas, demons, lots of really nifty stuff that you can really pad out forces and use as proxies. And the number 1, numero uno, the big cheese, the medieval era. It's often a favourite of fantasy players. Arthurian lore and your standard chivalric tropes sit well together, and the visual of a heavily armoured knight crushing orcs with a mace is evocative and iconic. There's several companies all selling plastic knights of every era and their retinue, with some even leaning closer to the fantasy elements. Admittedly, however, medieval is a whole era, so pinning stuff down is a little harder if you're looking for a unified scheme. In this case, I'd probably suggest War of the Roses and the 1450 to 1500 kits, with the Perry Brothers plastics kits covering spears, crossbows, handguns, great swords, bows, halberds, light cavalry, heavy cavalry, and some accompanying metal cannons. The Perry Brothers here are probably the best choice, as I've already mentioned, because not only is their work extremely well sculpted, but it's also incredibly cheap. You can buy a whole army for less than £100 easily. I would suggest 70, maybe even £60 to get a 1500 point force for Age of Fantasy. It really helps as well that with the War of the Roses kits, because everything looks so kind of generically Western fantasy, that you can just plop anything in. You can have a giant, you can have demons, you can have an ogre, anything that kind of fits in like European fantasy in general can plop in there, and it isn't really that outstanding. It's not, it doesn't make you raise an eyebrow. Just go, oh yes, that is a Tolkien-esque fantasy force. Once again, of course, remember this is just my opinion. I'm just simply trying to bring you guys something that I think is cheap, good-looking, and can fill out a force fairly simply and easily. I'd be very interested in hearing what you guys think is the better historical miniatures to fill out a fantasy army. Please send me a message through Facebook and let me know what you think. And with that, our main topic for today is done. Well, folks, I assumed that this pain in my butt had left me, but now it's back. Yes, I'm talking about the Rumour Machine. The infernal device appears to have crossed the Atlantic to appear in my living room, exuding something of a palpable sense of menace. I've currently ensconced it in a very secure pillow fort, and I'm approaching it now with a broom handle and some concern. Still, it's here, so it must want rumours to be heard, and the community deserves to see the future. Here we go. Come on, come on. There we go. A hologram? Ethan gets weird slapstick gags, but I get a hologram. Weak sauce. Well, at least there's no creepy old guy screaming about orders for it, so there's at least that. Okay, so it's focusing now. A bit staticky at first. I'm seeing bright flashes of light. Looks like laser blasts of some kind. And a jungle. Oh god, this isn't a Predator sequel, is it? Wait, now we've moved to a skull and... Wait, what the hell? It just ended as something with talons stepped on the skull. Is this a Terminator reboot? Is One Page Anon working with like Disney now to give us superior franchise movies? Jungles, talons, birds? Who knows? This thing isn't exactly... Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, so we're looking over a battlefield. I can see the ranks all in formation. Got kind of a Napoleonic thing going on. There's a lot of clouds, a lot of smoke. Oh, cannons. Yeah, that ain't pretty. Oh. Yeah. There's a bayonet charge. That's a lot of blood. Okay, we're zooming in a bit. Zoom in, zoom. Oh, thank God for that. I was gonna throw up. Okay, we're on a table. Okay, and there's a map. Okay, on the map there's an area circled. Oh, okay, it must be important. I can make out some text. I think it says. Oh. Thanks. Just as things get interesting, it cuts out. Listen here, you bucket of bolts. If you don't start getting your act together, I'm liable to dump you in a fire pit. Now I'm done telling off this hunk of junk. Let's look at Hobby. Hobby-wise, things have actually been progressing pretty well. I've nearly finished my Age of Fantasy specific Beastmen force. I'm trying to avoid the evil goatmen cliche and going for a more shades of grey snakemen force that, whilst not based one-to-one, uses some elements of Navajo and Pueblo culture within their background. I'll admit it's been mutable, as all fiction is, but my core concept is a strong, tribal people, noble in purpose, but stuck with darkness rapidly approaching them. Other than that, it's just trying to get my fem gang going. In this case, I've dubbed them the Nobels. The reason for the name will become apparent as the fiction continues. It's been a slow slog, obviously, to get stuff done. One model is done, however, and another is started. Hopefully with the Snake Men Force done, that'll free up some hobby space for me, and we can get some more stuff done. Other than the randomised fantasy minis that I'm just plonking out here and there. I've been experimenting with paints as well, trying to find some very simple styles to get things done. If you're on the One Page Rules Facebook page, you would have noticed I had some experiment with some wraiths, trying to pick out a very quick and easy spooky colour scheme. Very basic, just simply a white primer with 2 different inks to try and get that kind of gnarly ghost vibe off. Not quite the Lord of the Rings Army of the Dead glowy ghost vibe, but kind of approaching a more danker version. I'll admit some people have said this looks kind of like the monster from Scooby-Doo, which hey, if that works, it works. You know, I'm fine with some meddling kids chasing after my spooky ghosts, as long as you do clearly get the vibe that it is a ghost and not just a man in a green towel. I think one thing that's sometimes pushed a bit too hard on the community is everything has to look 100% amazing with top tier heavy metal paint jobs, stuff that can win you awards. I personally don't think that's very necessary. Obviously, you have to work to what you feel comfortable with, but sometimes you just want to get stuff on the table. I myself am more of a, these are gaming pieces, I want to play a game, but I do want it to look nice, but I don't try and push myself too hard. I don't want to feel unhappy with my toys. This is, after all, a hobby, and, if a hobby's making you unhappy, then you should stop, Or at least, take a pause. Too many of my friends have burnt themselves out trying to get stuff painted to a high degree, to the point where they just lose all joy in their gaming. And at One Page Fools, we try to push it no matter what game you play, whether it's One Page Rules, whether it's 40k, whether it's an Osprey game. It doesn't matter what you're playing. You need to enjoy your hobby. At the end of the day, this is all just about us all having fun and pushing toy soldiers around on the table. We shouldn't make ourselves unhappy with it. And with that unexpected speech, my friends, we come to the conclusion of today's episode. A bit shorter, no doubt, but no less welcome, I hope. Once again, I do apologise for the wait for this episode, and perhaps the length of this episode. But I do hope with the next episode that we'll be able to get another revolving co-host on, so we can balance things out a bit more and get some more discussions going. And I just want to say goodbye, good luck, and have great times and great games, everyone. Bye-bye.